Good evening. My name is Emily Castellan, and today I will be discussing the subject, the ethical dilemma of modesty. Now, this discussion will be centered around three cultures. There is the culture in Russia, Thailand, and the United States of America. Now, before we actually get into this, I will go over the 6 different steps I will be looking at this subject. So first, we'll gather the facts of from each culture, what each deems as modest. Second, we will discuss the ethical issues of them clashing together. Third, we'll discuss alternatives, how people will react in different ways, and the different options and paths they can take in response to their surroundings. Fourth, we'll talk about virtues and principles. We'll bring in the principles from the Bible and see how we are acting, discuss why we are acting this way, but also bring in how God wants us to act and why we should follow Him and obey Him. Uh, Fifth, we will discuss the consequences when these cultures clash. And lastly, we'll discuss the decision of what should we take from this and how should we act in the future after learning what we have learned. So first country, Russia. There's actually a bit of difference between generations. So each country is going to be divided up in from generation, urban and countryside, the difference between theirs, between business culture and social culture. So first generational, the younger generation tends to dress in a more modern style, a little more Western, tends to show a little more skin. However, when it comes to school and work, they are definitely more conservative and modest and I would say more classy than the average American. Um, the older gen the older generation tends to dress in more traditional clothes with head coverings and cover past their knees and also cover up their arms and especially their shoulders. Now, the first thing that both all generations in Russia believe it, they all have high respect for their history and culture, and they do not appreciate it when it is being disrespected. So that's a very important thing to know. Also, with the influence of yes, in some of the younger generation, but specifically with the older generation, that these these cultures, every different area has a different culture. They're all affected by the religions of the areas. So, the Southern Republic of Russia, they are highly influenced by Muslim culture. They are mainly a Muslim state. And just keep that in mind because that is the core of their culture. And other areas are more influenced by Russian Orthodox. So, the difference between urban and countryside, the general rule for each country is the further from the center of the city, the more conservative you become. In the city is more modern, show more skin, and and being sucked into the culture, especially through pop music that highly influences morality. And the countryside tends to be more conservative, down to earth because they have to work with their hands and survive. Now, in the business world, they it is assume that you will dress modestly and conservatively. And now there's also modesty in how you interact with others. So leaders are strong, they need to be generous, they'll trust, but they're also, according to American standards, micromanagers, because it is very important to keep their name, uh, the keep the respect of their name and make sure that everything is done to the best of their ability. It's also considered rude and immodest to promote yourself to, to get further along in the business, to get promoted. And so it's viewed better to be humble rather than to look haughty and self-centered. Now, this culture highly depends on relationships, and so just keep that in mind. Um, in the social area, it is always polite and modest to bring something. And if you are offered something to eat, to go someplace, is always viewed as humble if you refuse it. Refuse it at least one or two times before you are allowed to accept it in a culturally acceptable way. Um, we also need to give words of affirmation, honoring toasts to our friends and especially our hosts and our business leaders, bosses, uh, and use formal titles until they say otherwise. So, in also with greetings, men give eye contact and a strong handshake. Women often give a soft handshake kisses on the cheek, no matters how close you are. They are very straightforward. And in general, again, dress code is quite modest. Um, but most importantly, romantic gestures are assumed to be kept in private. So not you don't see many people holding hands, kissing in public, because to them that is deemed inappropriate. Uh, with the social atmosphere between men and women, uh, men and women are allowed to talk to each other, don't not too much contact, but that is what is acceptable to them. Now, for Thailand, they highly, highly honor their elders. And again, same rule with Thailand. The further away you get from the city, the more conservative you get, the more traditional you get, especially as they adhere to their religions. Um, and it is very important to them for them to take care of their elders and to not talk back to them and to always speak with respectful language using please, thank you, Mr., Mrs., ma'am, sir. It is highly valuable to them. And the difference between urban and countryside, countryside is more conservative again. And also, I would say here, as you go to the countryside and they're dressed more casual, uh, yes, some of their villages, some of their small towns are influenced by Islamic culture, and which promotes modest dressing and covering up. They also would dress more modestly because they want to shield their skin from the hot sun. It is better to wear clothes because it cools you off more. But also, they value light skin, so they love their big brim hats, not only because it takes the heat off of your head, but also keeps your skin light, and they try to be as beautiful as they can according to the eyes of their culture. Now, in the business setting, it is assumed that you wear formal conservative dress, and they and the work environment must greet the leader first, the boss first. Uh, this is a heavy safe face culture. So if your boss has a bad idea, the crew is more likely to be yes men and save the respect and face of their boss before they would correct him, which is a hard culture to balance, especially when things are going down the wrong path in a way that is maybe dangerous for a business. They also highly depend on building relationships, and they highly appreciate and respond well to being respectable, patient, and calm in these situations. They do not like to interrupt. This is how much they appreciate being respectful. being modest in their interactions. And they also expect you to be satisfied with what you do, with your positions. Never should you push yourself. Never should you try to push to the top in an overt way. Um, and so, because because in the safe face culture, they the boss is more distant and is a little more looked upon as a high figurehead. So, in the social area, uh, indirect communication. They are not direct because direct is considered rude. Uh, no public affection shown, minimal opposite sex contact. However, you are allowed to talk to the other. Uh, Now, this is very interesting. No direct eye contact because it is considered a challenge, and which is very uncomfortable for them. Uh, in greetings, whether you are friends or business partners, or you always bow in respect. Uh, and in this particular culture, you must take note that you do not touch the head because the head is a place of honor. And you never point at something with the sole of your foot or with your foot because the foot is in the Thai culture the dirtiest thing. And it is highly disrespectful if you do that. Also, also according to their culture, do not avoid wearing blue, black, or green because those are the signs of mourning. Now, something I forgot to say about the Russian culture is that they love giving gifts. Whether you go to someone's house, whether you uh, whether you go to someone's house or go out to dinner with someone, bring a little gift, a little fruit, a little food, um, a little token, and it really touches their hearts and opens doors. Now, for the USA, in all areas of life, they highly emphasize punctuality. There's a little more grace in the social area, but punctuality is very important. Russian culture, Thai culture, uh, be punctual, but it's not overly important because people and relationships are more important than time. In America, time is money, and and we know that humans know that time is short because we don't have much time on earth, and since we don't have much time, you will respect us by valuing our time. Now, when it comes with family in different generations, greetings are informal, and especially with close friends and relatives. Uh, it is normal to be polite to elders. However, it's not common to see. Actually, American culture commonly is combative and disrespectful with the older generation, trying to change everything and saying they were wrong about things and judging. Uh, and it's not as a healthy culture. Now, the overall culture, the culture of the family cores, they will say that this is wrong. However, the general culture does not um, hold the younger generation accountable as much. Now, the difference between urban and countryside, punctuality, uh, business is always punctual, city is always punctual. However, it matters what town you're in. Some towns you are, especially in the South, you are allowed to. There's a little more grace with time because they are focused more on the people they're with and building the relationship rather than being on a rigid schedule. Also, uh, for both the city and the countryside, you must avoid being loud, overly loud in public is considered disrespectful. And also, it children are taught that that is dangerous because it causes people to track you. Now, in business, you should either be on time or early, or usually the saying is if you're on time, you're already late. So, best to be early. Meetings matters what business you're in. You can be in formal wear, casual wear, uh, but you always push yourself and try to make it to the top. of the ladder in your business. And it is normal to have disagreements, to be blunt. And just because someone disagrees with your idea does not mean it's a personal attack. It's just they want the best ideas, the best possible way for everyone to succeed. Uh, and the American culture also encourages building personal relationships on the teams. Now, in the social world, we do value being punctual. However, it's deemed all right if you're late, just to call your host, call or text your host and say, I'm going to be this many minutes late. So sorry. However, if you go to a party, you could be half an hour late and not say anything, because it's fine, because it's just going to be a big group of people, and you just filter in and filter out who can come in, who can stay, who needs to go. But however, if you were late and you needed to bring a specific main dish, that will not go over as well. Um, so in the Thai culture, remember, in the Thai culture and the Russian culture, you're supposed to, if you're offered food or offered to go out to eat, offered something, it's always polite to refuse one or two times and then receive it. In American culture, if you're hungry, say so, because your host wants to feed you. And in the dinner table, always pass the food. And a very main thing that Americans harp on is do not eat. Do not eat with your mouth open, and do not speak with your mouth full at the dinner table. Now, the ethical issues. What is true modesty? What is the balance of respecting another's culture and being respectful without losing one's identity or individuality? And remember, in Thai culture and Russian culture, uh, they are more family, societal oriented. In America, we are more focused on self. So, virtues and principles that we can glean from a Christian's perspective, God calls us to not cause offense for any petty reason, or if someone has a narrow mindset and is weak, do not cause them to sin. To be at peace with your brother, to show that we are Christians by our love. And according to all men, be at peace, which meaning be at peace with someone according to what you do. Not meaning to be perfect, but be respectful of one's own culture, of one another's culture, and make things right. And if they choose not to forgive you, or if they dislike you because of your faith, that is on them. Now, we are to respect all cultures, because all cultures are created by God, and all cultures reveal a little part of God in his amazing creation. A witness for Christians are called to be a witness for Christ. And Christ was always kind to those, even those who had narrow perspectives. Like in John chapter 5, the man at the waters of Bethsaida, Jesus asks if he wants to be healed. He says, no one can carry me, no one can heal me. I have no hope. Yet Jesus heals him. And yet that man turned him in to the Pharisees. Jesus knew that would happen, yet he chose to heal him and bless him. Now, if you're not really a Christian and you just want the basic facts, truths, what you can look at is it is better to reach within another culture, not to be bullheaded and trying to change everything. Not everything from our perspective is right. We must create a space saying, acknowledging that some of our ways are wrong, some of their ways are wrong, but we cannot change a culture through one encounter. We must follow the laws of the country if we want to stay there. Now, if a country deems it illegal to spread the gospel, that is, in those cases, who we first obey is God. And so also we should be smart. Now, in these situations, in these countries, it's not as bad as if you're in Iran or Iraq, where if you don't wear a hijab, you might be imprisoned or kicked out of the country, or in really terrible danger. So following the laws of a country is quite important. Now, so alternative reactions, some possible reactions that may come about. Uh, so we can, so a person can either come from the perspective of treating a culture as sacred. Uh, they could do come from the perspective of doing whatever they want, not really caring about anything, or from a perspective of intentionally disrespecting a culture. There's also the perspective of being ignorant, but we will not touch on that right now. So when you enter a different culture, you're entering into a world that is not your own and into a society that was built on their values. So it is important to respect those. Now, if a culture says that you should sacrifice or be cruel to a human, uh, absolutely not. The God's law supersedes any governmental law or any societal law. Uh, so in the first option, the person respects the culture and informs themselves about the other person's culture in hope to be at peace and build friendships. The other person doesn't really care about anything and just wants to do what they want. The next person intentionally disrespects the culture, they believe the world revolves around them. And these last two options are honestly the best ways to make enemies. Now, a common a common problem Western women or American women have with other cultures who encourage modestly dressing is they accuse them of it infringing on their rights. So how this goes in the younger generation is it is terrible if men objectifies my body, but if I objectify myself and wear modest clothes, it is totally fine. So it is quite, which is not a godly perspective. They think their rights are trampled on when they need to adhere to another culture, and they feel threatened by control or a standard outside of themselves, a standard that they don't agree with. And this is where American individuality comes to a fault because it teaches people that the world revolves around them, and which is not true. So some consequences. So what are some consequences of breaking these social rules of modestly dressing in Russia, Thailand, America? Well, you will be judged by others, maybe even shunned. Uh, for specifically Russia and Thailand, perceived as a prostitute or immoral woman. In America, if you dress too modestly and say so, you are considered an outsider, a weirdo, someone who should not be socialized with. Uh, People will notice that when you are disrespectful of their culture, and they will not take kindly to it. You will be deemed as untrustworthy of friendship. And for Christians who are striving to be the light of Christ everywhere they go, this is not a good look. Now, in the Thai culture with making eye contact, you could be intimidating or domineering, and that is not showing the love of Christ. And also, if we are not informed, we can miscommunicate in many different ways, in ways specifically that we don't mean to. So, what should we take from all of this? Well, we should study other cultures and be respectful of them, especially if you're going into that culture. I know in Thailand, they're used to foreigners dressing or tourists, I should say, dressing in their own culture's ways. So for Americans, they wear spaghetti straps and very short shorts. Um, but though they see and understand in the city that they Americans are not meaning to be immodest, they still are very uncomfortable with it and do not appreciate it. So act accordingly to the laws, according to the social rules. If you are upset about this, just try it and see what you can learn about their culture. There's so many precious hidden things that you wouldn't learn if you were making enemies by disrespecting their culture. And if we're honest, there are worse situations to be in. If you're in the middle, if you're in the Middle East and you decide not to adhere to their cultural rules, you are more than likely to end up dead. So be thankful for where you are at. Um, Respect culture. Culture is created by God. Once again, I say culture is created by God, and we should respect those who God has created in His image, and uh, in respecting those cultures, like what Paul did in Athens, when he saw an altar to the unknown God, he reached into their culture, saw where God could meet them, and he spoke to them. It's a beautiful picture. And lastly, giving up our selfish individuality. Our selfish individuality is not from God. God created us to have community. God created us to give glory to Him. And individuality is self centered, and self centeredness is not from God. Thank you for listening to this presentation, and I hope you have a blessed evening. Goodbye.